Greetings from unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin Anishinaabe territory in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada's capital. In North America, I'm 7 hours behind you, so I'm recording this so that I don't have to be there at 2:30 in the morning to present. So thank you for accepting this recorded intervention. I hope that you are having a rewarding and excellent workshop, and I look forward to receiving any feedback and further discussion. I'd like to talk a little bit about our experience from MiningWatch Canada. We started off, I think, at the very beginning, really, 20 odd years ago, dealing with legal intimidation from mining companies who did not want us to be exposing their activities, where they've been involved in real serious crimes against human rights, against communities, against people, and against the environment. And we had to learn fairly quickly what those legal tools were and how to use them. So we were being accused of libel and defamation. We had to learn what those things were. We were really, I think, naive in a sense about the legal power of major corporations, the power of very expensive lawyers with very expensive clothes and huge expense accounts, and their ability to come after small nonprofit organizations that were just trying to expose what we thought was the truth and therefore should be public and should be known. So we had to learn about that. We had to learn about what kinds of evidence we needed, what kind of protection we could provide for ourselves. For instance, by not showing malice towards these companies, and no matter what we might actually think of them, that we're not out to try and get them, we're out to try and make them behave properly. And calling them the spawn of Satan and so on is going to backfire on you, because if you get to court, it will really look like you were more interested in getting these guys than in getting justice. So these are all things that you sort of learn along the way, and they're interesting and useful. But we also tried to share that learning. We did legal workshops with other organizations to try and make sure that this was a collective learning. And one of the outcomes, I think, along the way, and the result of the use of defamation and libel law by corporations to stifle legitimate public interest activities, so exposing the nefarious activities of the corporations and using defamation and libel law to try and do that. We do have now in some parts of Canada at least anti-SLAPP laws. So the courts are required to look at a defamation lawsuit and decide early on if it is legitimate or if it's just an attempt to use the law to knock back any public criticism of their activities. Now, I think our organizations have been very creative in looking for various legal mechanisms. We've looked high and low for legal mechanisms to try and make companies accountable, and unfortunately we're teaching the corporates to be creative as well. So they're looking for other mechanisms to come after us. We've even seen them here using the anti-SLAPP laws to block legitimate public interest litigation. So accusing the groups that are bringing legal action against companies for fraud, for any kind of misdemeanor, of actually using the law unfairly, and they're having recourse to the anti-SLAPP laws to try and have these cases thrown out of court. And of course, it's not working but it does make it much more difficult to go to court to use those mechanisms. Um, and they're looking for other mechanisms as well. So they're looking at things like trespass laws for, if people have gone to take, let's say, water samples, or to look at the company's property and look at what is actually being done on the ground, they're accusing them of trespass, even where you have a legal right to go and legal reasons to be there. Again, it's something else. Just it's legal harassment, and there's no real way to prevent that. You can you can win in court, you can have those charges thrown out, but you have to go to court, you have to mount a defense, and you have to defend yourself against those charges. Likewise, they've turned to professional standards bodies. So if you're a lawyer or an engineer and you have a legal college or a legal body that you're part of, then as a professional, you have to uphold those standards, and there are processes in place to ensure that those professionals are following their professional standards. And those are also fairly onerous. I mean, they have to take it fairly seriously. If you're, a lawyer, an engineer, or a doctor, and you're accused of professional misconduct, they have to take that seriously. And that means that, again, you have to go through this whole process to marshal the evidence and defend yourself against those accusations, even if they're completely outrageous, and even if they're thrown out at the first possible moment, you still have to defend yourself. So it's another way of harassing people for doing their jobs, as activists, as organizers, as organizations, or trying to prevent our lawyers from doing their job, for instance. So there are a few key pieces, I think, that we need to look at in terms of how to go about protecting ourselves, how to go about defending ourselves, and how to make this an unpalatable tool for corporations to use to come after us in trying to do what we think needs to be done. So, the first that I mentioned it earlier is education and awareness. It's understanding ourselves and spreading the understanding of what those legal mechanisms are, what the basic precautions are in terms of what you can say and what you can't really say without it being defamatory, and to make sure that you've got that awareness and that is understood. So not just one or two people in the group. The whole organization is aware of, including boards of directors and so on, are aware of what those risks are and how the basic sort of defensive mechanisms. Another aspect is documentation. So what is the evidence? We need to be able to show what we know, how we know it. So not just what is the evidence, but how do we verify that evidence, especially if it's something like if it's a document, is this a genuine document? Do we know where it came from? Do we know how we got it? Even if we don't want to disclose exactly where it came from, can we verify that it is a genuine document without exposing whistleblowers, let's say, without exposing people who might be in a position to be subject to retribution, but to be able to show that, yes, this is a genuine document, and especially with things like video and cell phone recordings and so on, are those actually what we say they are, and is there any way of verifying that, yes, this recording was made at this date, at this location? Is that there's geolocation often on such things, and can we show that it hasn't been tampered with? Especially important with the kind of deep fake tools that are available now for pretty much any kind of evidence. So it's not just a bad Photoshop, but you can actually have really high quality fakery going on, and we need to make sure that we can show that that's not what's going on here. And even going to, if you have witnesses, where are they, and are they able to present testimony? So if the person that you need to rely on is far away, if they're not able to travel, or if they're not able to come forward for whatever reason, you need to be aware of that and clear about that. And then, another aspect is transparency and accountability. So one of the things that we've done is go public with this. So if we're making information public and we're being accused of defamation, that this is false or defamatory information, we say, no, it's not. We have the documentation. We know what we're talking about. This is important for the public to know about. This is important information to bring forward. And we will make public the fact that that the corporation is trying to stop that from becoming public. So the threats themselves can be made public, and that can be a deterrent, again, to the corporation, the mining company, to make those accusations, because they'll know that those lawyers' letters and so on will be published, and we'll point the spotlight back at them for trying to prevent us from presenting that information, and we stand behind the information, and we will, essentially take the offensive against people who are trying to stop us. And maybe most importantly is the question of having networks of support. So, when the going gets tough, who do we fall back on? Who can support us? There will be expenses, there will be extra work required, and the kind of threat that corporations are really trying to impose with these legal actions is to knock us out of contention, to sideline us as individual activists, as organizations, as communities, as families, to say, put a burden on us that we can't handle. And the best response to that is to be able to take that on, to support that burden, and to have the networks of support that we can call on, organizations, again, community around us that will support us, that we are confident, and that we can come back and say, we will respond, we will stand against these accusations because we have this support. And I think that's really critical. And at the end of the day, we know that, and I think this is an important message for people, is that you will be threatened. If you threaten the interests of large corporations, they will turn on you, they will try to threaten you in turn, because if we are trying to expose them, if we're trying to find justice for people affected by mining, if the corporations don't feel threatened, then we're not doing our job. With that, I would like to thank you for the time and turn it back to you.